All right, we're back on a Thursday night here on Open Line as we talk about the issue of student loan debt, college loan debt, I should say, here in the United States, and proposals to cancel some of that debt. And our guest tonight is Whitney Barkley-Denney with the group Center for Responsible Lending. Let's get right to the phones. We've got a couple of callers who've called in. We appreciate it. Trey is first. Hi, Trey. Welcome.
Hey, guys. How y'all doing?
Doing well.
Good,
well,
thanks.
as far as cancellation goes, I don't think that would be fair to somebody that's actually lending money. But if you're like me, I graduated high school in 2002, and everything I got from FAFSA, the interest rate was in the high 20s. Still in the high 20s that I'm paying on. Granted, I paid it down from $33,000. I'm close to $10,000 now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they could restructure loans. Somehow. I don't know if that's possible, but I think that would be a fair, canceling loans. I don't think that's possible. That's a lot of debt, and that's a lot that the taxpayers have to pay for. And it's truly just, it's sad that a lot of people can't pay it. But if I'm accountable, that I knew I took the money out, and I've paid it since 2007, so I think everybody else should be too. And I will hang up and I'll listen to your thoughts. Thank you.
Good point. Appreciate it. So he's talking about just restructuring the actual loan process, which I know you would probably agree. You said there's a whole bunch of things that need to be done here to make things better. But we'll go ahead and listen to what you have to say, Whitney.
Absolutely. So I think there are a couple of things that we sort of need to lay groundwork with. One is that we actually aren't that sure that the government makes money off of these loans. So many of them are in income-driven repayment plans and other things, and other plans that allow people to pay a bare minimum of $20 or $50 a month, that they're really not actually making a ton of money back on their loans if we look out over the life of their loans. And in fact, there are some cohorts that are just in default all of the time, particularly students who went to, for example, a for-profit college. So they're not getting that money back. I think we also should be clear that there aren't other lenders out there for the majority of the loans, which is why President Biden could cancel this loan debt via executive orders, because the government here is the lender. This is their debt, and they're the ones who are servicing it. They're the ones who are, seeing this decline in revenues from this debt. I agree. There needs to be a lot of structural changes. I hate to hear about the interest rates that Trey is paying. That is absolutely unreal. And there is legislation that's been proposed by Senator Warren and others to change those interest rates as part of student loan debt restructuring overall. So I think that that's something that has definitely been discussed and definitely been heard.
And what about the cost of this? Critics have said it would just cost too much money, and the taxpayers would end up bearing the burden.
Yeah. So I think that's the question of how viable this program actually is, comes in, of how much money we're actually making. And because of accounting, the way that Congress accounts for this and the way the federal government accounts for this is not really clear, particularly because these loans tend to be 20 and 25 years long and a lot of payment periods. And remember, that money is going to be forgiven at the end of those 20 and 25 years for a lot of folks anyways who have just paid the interest. And so it's really kind of a complicated financial structure that isn't quite the same as a mortgage or other debt that we might be forgiving.
Sure. All right, we'll go back to the phones and we'll talk with Mike next. Mike, welcome to Open Line.
Oh, hello?
Yeah, Mike, go ahead. What's on your mind?
I got a couple of questions. Now, you brought up the student loans being forgiven after the 20 or 25 year mark.
Right.
I think what a lot of people don't seem to realize is that when those loans are forgiven, it doesn't just go away. It actually is then considered taxable income, the amount that is forgiven. Mm-hmm. So if you had $20,000 forgiven, you would actually have to pay taxes on $20,000 of extra income for that year. So if we're looking at canceling student loan debt now, whether it be $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, actually, if you talked about getting up in that $50,000 range, would you not see, what would the tax implications of that be? Is it now I add $50,000 of income on top of my current income and have a huge tax burden at that point that I got to pay? Now I owe the IRS.
Right. And Whitney brought this up earlier, but go ahead, Whitney. We'll hear what you have to say again.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And Mike, I can tell you that Center for Responsible Lending's position would be absolutely that we have to fix that tax liability issue, whether we do it now with cancellation or whether we do it 20 or 25 years down the road. I'm actually shocked that this provision the tax liability on this hasn't been something that Congress has handled. They've handled it for public service loan forgiveness. So if you get your loans forgiven after 10 years of public service, you do get that tax. You don't have to pay a tax liability on that. And we think that makes sense, and we should see that on other forgiveness as well.
Whitney, I know that those who are proponents of this say that one of the things is that this could stimulate the economy because, if all of a sudden forgiving loans, that means borrowers, they don't have the obligation to make monthly payments. That would allow them to spend money on other things. But then opponents say, those required loan payments are currently paused, so forgiving debt would provide no immediate stimulus to the economy. So there's kind of a double edge there. What do you say to that?
That's right. I think it's really about looking at the long term.
Right.
One of the folks I never thought I'd be working with is a former legal services attorney who came through the 2008 recession, where real estate agents and the national realtors, but they actually have been supportive of cancellation as well, in part because they have seen a 6-year wait and pause in home buying among millennials.
Right.
And that turns into 2 houses for them, right? Because people used to buy their starter home or their starter condo right out of college, and then they would start a family and move into something bigger. We're not seeing that anymore. So what we're actually seeing is a 6-year lag, 2 houses and home buying sales among millennials. And so this is something that's having a real effect on the national economy. And I think that if we had some sort of forgiveness, we might not see it right away because of the payment pause. But I think once we're out of this sort of extraordinary time in our nation's history, we're more on a steady track, we're rebuilding, then we will see people start using that money for down payments, to start businesses and to do other things that they should be able to do with the degrees that they've worked hard for.
Right. Well, I should point out the Department of Education, and correct me if I'm wrong, already has some targeted debt cancellation policies in place. I know it wipes away debt for defrauded students and disabled veterans. The defrauded students, it's important because, there are thousands of borrowers who say they were defrauded by those, now defunct for-profit colleges like Corinthian and ITT Tech. I know that the previous administration had rolled back a President Obama rule that streamlined the process to review their claims. So there's some in the system there, but there are some things in place currently to help, right?
That's right. So there are a couple of different ways to have your loans discharged currently. There is, as you said, the borrower defense to repayment. That generally is not a full discharge, generally is weighed against your income that you're actually making. That's for those defrauded students. There is public service loan forgiveness, where you work for 10 years in a nonprofit job and you're able to get that discharge. Now, there's been a lot of problems with actually administering that program, though hopefully we are over those road bumps. And then there are also the discharges for totally disabled veterans, as well as other people who have complete and total disabilities that are going to interfere with their ability to work. I will say that that's a pretty high bar for most people to meet as far as getting that discharge.
All right, let's go back to the phones, and Cindy's up next. Hi, Cindy, welcome.
Hi, Cindy.
Cindy, you there?
I
Go ahead.
I have a question because, I don't have any disability, but my thing is that if you aren't able to get a job that is in your field and you are having to settle for jobs that are under what it was that you were expected to make, then why is it that you're expected to come out of that money when you don't make that money? So my thing is that, I'm not asking for anyone to give me anything, but I'm just asking for someone to recognize that if I can't get into the field that I spent $50,000 or $60,000 to get into, why is it that I cannot get some kind of break that is not going to require me to pay $500 a month to pay back something that I cannot redeem?
Okay, let's listen to what she has to say.
I hear you, Cindy, and I hear the frustration in your voice. It's all too common. I would just say that I agree. I mean, I think that this goes back to sort of the what I was talking about before when I was talking about how state and federal governments have sort of withdrawn their funding of higher education. And so that's been made up for in tuition. And what that means is that sometimes that tuition is too high to actually, support the job that you're eventually going to get from it. I will say, as we were talking, Rory and I were talking about earlier, if you think that you were defrauded, so if this was a thing where you went to a for-profit school and found out you don't really have the credentials you thought you did, then that might be a case for borrower defense to repayment. But we do hear all of the time about folks who spent that $50,000, that $60,000 thinking they were getting a foothold into the middle class, and they were just totally unable to find a job that allowed them to get that foothold and repay their student loans.
All right. Thank you so much, Cindy. We appreciate it. We'll get in one more call before the next break, and that will be John. Hi, John. Welcome.
Great.
Go ahead, John.
Hello, Rory.
Hi.
And it's Whitney. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Again, my name is John, and I'm just curious. I want to piggyback off what Cindy just said with regards to getting certain types of jobs, and they don't pay much. You're never ever able to pay back the student loan in the first place. And what happens when you're in and out of jobs through the years for various reasons or whatever? Sometimes people can just fire you because they don't like you or whatever, or people sell companies or what have you, and then they sell the loan to other servicers and they compound the interest. I'm a person who's experienced the compounding of interest over the years, and it has amounted to like $30,000 have turned into like 120 over the years because I've been in and out of jobs, Rory. So I want Ms. Whitney to speak to that. If that's not even fair, they might as well wipe it out because some of us are so far behind the mark, we could never catch up with, jobs with social science degrees, education degrees. I mean, you could never catch up making 40, 50 grand a year, and they're constantly compounding. I'm just going to say this, and I'll let her answer. Mm-hmm. I recently spoke to a servicer. My loan was sold to another servicer, and they told me, John, while you wait to be assigned to a new servicer, your loan is going to be charged. I mean, the interest is going to be $130 a day. So please, Ms. Whitney, speak to that.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about that? Thank you, Rory.
Thank you. Good call, John. It's frustrating.
Yeah, a great call. So, I think there's two separate issues there. One is the servicers, these are the folks who actually take the money, right, and help get you into these programs. And we have had so many problems, Roy, with servicers. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau back in 2015 filed a lawsuit that claimed that Navient, which is one of the largest servicers, might be John's, added billions of dollars in student loan debt to borrowers' accounts because of these terrible servicing practices. And so this is a whole nother piece of this that really just has gotten out of control. And John is absolutely right. We do see that borrowers often make very little progress in paying down. In fact, and I will say that there is a racial and gender component to this. 3/4 of outstanding student loan debt is held by women. Women tend to, because we often work lower paying jobs or have breaks in employment, take longer to pay down our student loan debt than men. And then because of sort of historical structural discrimination and having to take out more loan debt than white borrowers, we see that Black borrowers 20 years down the road have nearly as much loan debt as they graduated with. And so this is an issue that affects different groups differently.
Sure.
But we are seeing definite patterns when it comes to people who are paying for years and years and years and never actually making a dent in that debt.
With that, we're going to take another break. We've got a number of calls, a lot of people interested in this topic tonight, and we appreciate it. We'll be right back.